Kaiba vs Bakura is a duel that truly stands out because it pits the protagonist Yugi's greatest enemy against his greatest rival. Unfortunately, 6 turns in, the duel comes to a halt when Bakura leaves, but I've always wondered who would have won the duel between these two had it finished. Obviously, most people peg Kaiba as the second best duelist behind Yugi, and Bakura isn't known for winning many duels at all, but this being the arc where he's finally the lead villain makes it at least fathomable that anyone not named Yugi who duels him will lose. So I'm going to break down the potential routes this duel could have gone, then decide which one would be most likely. To set the stage, Kaiba has just destroyed Diabound Kernel with Blue Eyes, leaving Bakura with 2 cards on the field. He uses one Rebirth Tablet to revive the destroyed Diabound, then uses Mirror Tablet to strengthen it to 3300 attack and make it battle the Blue Eyes again. This time of course Blue Eyes is destroyed, and Diabound's attack then goes back to its original 1800. In main phase 2, Kaiba uses Monster Reborn to bring back Blue Eyes. So the life point count stands at 1400 to 900 with Bakura in the lead. As for what's on the field and in hand, Bakura only controls the Diabound Kernel with no cards in hand, while Kaiba controls Blue Eyes and has 1 card in hand. So when I say that the conclusion of this duel is completely up to the imagination, that is very much the case because we don't know what Kaiba is holding in hand, and we also don't know what Bakura is about to draw. What we do know is that Diabound has the ability in the anime to equip itself to the opponent's monster and reduce its attack by 1800. Bakura mentions that by destroying Blue Eyes, Diabound has duplicated and absorbed its attack power. This is likely in reference to the RPG he's playing against the Pharaoh and not the in-universe card effect, which reads, once per turn, you can equip this card to a monster or unequip it, then return it to its face-up original position. The equipped monster loses attack equal to this card's attack. If the equipped monster leaves the field, special summon this card from the spell Trap Zone. To clarify how that last bit works, when Diabound destroys Vorst Raider, who is equipped with the Doppelganger Diabound, we see the Doppelganger come back as a monster, as evidenced by the fact that Bakura still controls the Spirit Illusion card that summoned the Doppelganger. But when Kaiba tributes the weakened Blue Eyes, which is equipped with the Doppelganger, the Spirit Illusion card appears to leave the field as it's no longer seen in any of the full field views. This is going to become an important point as we get into the possible moves for both duelists. So ultimately, Diabound doesn't have some other hidden ability that we know of. His attack doesn't all of a sudden become 3000 since it destroyed Blue Eyes. It sits at 1800 after losing the boost from Mirror Tablet. We can assume that Kaiba is running his standard deck. Now this is a manga-based arc, but it's an anime-exclusive duel. Of note, Kaiba uses Soul Release, which he otherwise does not use except in the KC Grand Championship arc, another anime-exclusive duel. Because of this, we'll give Kaiba access to any card he has used throughout the anime, but excluding anything he only showed in a briefcase but never actually used. As for Bakura's deck, he appears to be running some of the same cards he used in Battle City, such as Headless Knight and Earl of Demise, but he's obviously added new cards as well. We know that with this duel against Yugi later on that he showcases an entirely different strategy involving milling the opponent's deck, but since we're in the same arc and that duel is the next duel we see, we can also assume that he has those cards in his deck as well. Basically, let's give both duelists the full gamut of cards that they have shown throughout the series so that we leave no stone unturned. There are 3 ways we can decide what would have happened. They are the best card available method, the good move method, and the statistical method. The statistical method says that based on all the cards available to the duelist, what is the most likely that they would have to work with. I might reference stats from time to time, but I'm largely going to ignore this method. The reason for that being that anime duels tend to be written for dramatic purposes. This is why you never see anyone scoop, and why you almost always see a top deck, read hard of the cards, to win or take over a game. And since we're talking about 2 of the most important characters in the show, we can safely say that both of them are going to make at the very least a good move and at best the best available move, which brings us to the other 2 methodologies. The good move method gives each duelist a set of options that allows them to tilt the game state toward them, even if ever so slightly. That could mean dealing some damage to the opponent, building up their board, or breaking down the opponent's board. But it's not going to outright win the duel for them in the current turn. And finally, the best card available method grants the duelist the best card that their deck has to offer to significantly help them in the current game state. Given that the life point count stands at 1400 to 900, the best card available could help a duelist to the extent that he outright wins the duel, but at the very least puts him close to it. In my opinion, this last method is the best method because it allows us to end the duel by Kaiba's 4th turn, i.e. the 8th turn of the duel, and it also allows us to direct the duel in a dramatic fashion and avoid an anticlimactic finish. Going into the 9th turn of the duel leads to an exponential explosion in the number of possibilities the duel can go, And the last thing I want to do is leave you at the end of this video with the answer. I could go either way. So while I will talk about the good move method and the implications therein, my ultimate conclusions will lean toward the best card available method, just so we can leave here with a definitive conclusion. With all that science mumbo jumbo about assumptions and methodologies out of the way, the first thing we need to do is determine what is Kaiba's last card in hand. At the start of his third turn, he uses Card of Demise to draw 4 cards, meaning there was already one in hand. Based on the animation, as well as him not using it the turn prior, we can also say that it is likely he just drew Card of Demise, so the other card he's holding wasn't that. Of the other cards he's played this turn, Silent Doom, Blue Eyes, Soul Release, and Monster Reborn, which of these is it likely that he drew from Card of Demise, and which may he have held from the previous turn? Kaiba used Flute of Summoning Dragon on the previous turn and didn't summon the other copy of Blue Eyes, so he likely drew this from Card of Demise. He could have used Soul Release to get rid of Spirit Shield in main phase 2 of the previous turn because duels in the anime don't tend to wait to get rid of opponents' cards, so he likely drew this from Card of Demise as well. Monster Reborn Kaiba could have used to bring back Vorse Raider if he thought Bakura's set card wasn't going to stop him, and that 1900 plus the 1200 Blue Eyes could have dealt by destroying Diabound would have been enough for game, so he likely drew Reborn from Card of Demise. But Silent Doom is a card that would have served no purpose to play on the previous turn. It would only bring back Vorse Raider in defense, so there was no point in using it in main phase 1, and it doesn't seem as though Kaiba was worried about the Diabound and the Doppelganger to the extent that he needed to bolster his defenses. So the card he started off this turn with could very well have been Silent Doom, meaning the 4th card he drew with Card of Demise could be anything. You might say, well, wouldn't he set the Silent Doom then play Card of Demise to get an additional draw? But we often see in the anime players use a card like Card of Sanctity inefficiently by not setting their spells and traps before playing it. In fact, Kaiba himself does this when he uses Card of Demise against Yugi in the Battle City semifinals, not setting final attack orders and polymerization before playing it. So it's possible he just held a spell in hand, and so long as that's a possibility, we have to explore it. This possibility leads to a branch, where we have a set of scenarios contingent on Kaiba already having Silent Doom, and a branch of scenarios contingent on him having held some other card at the end of his second turn, and that is where we'll start. If Kaiba always had Silent Doom, that means the 4th card he drew with Card of Demise could be anything from his card pool. We can narrow this down further with the good move and best card available methodologies, but we also need to keep in mind that this is a card he didn't bother to use over the course of his 3rd turn. Given all this, we can break down his possible card into a defensive move that can help him survive, or an offensive move that can help him on his next turn. If we were to give him something defensive, there are 10 options that are anywhere between good and best card. These are Shadow Spell, Negate Attack, Command Silencer, Cloning, Magical Trick Mirror to steal Bakura's Grief Tablet, Last Turn, Burst Breath, Wish of Final Effort, Flat Level 4, and Ring of Destruction. The last card of course provides the possibility that this duel does in fact end in a draw if Kaiba needs to use Ring of D before Bakura can go for game. As for offensive moves, again, it can't be a card he would have otherwise used during his main phase 1 or battle phase. For example, if he had Kaiser Glider in hand, he could have tributed his weakened Blue Eyes for it, then used Silent Doom or Reborn to bring back Blue Eyes, which would have been a far better move than what he did. It's not something he could have used right away, like a Pot of Greed, Soul Exchange, or Cost Down. Let's also say that it's not a dead card due to our chosen methodologies. So something like Enemy Controller won't be it since he can't fulfill the life point cost. This leaves us with a few possibilities, but if we want to go with a card that is at minimum a good offensive card, then the options are the ones that can at least crash into Diabound. Those are La Jin, X-Head Cannon, Luster Dragon No. 1, Spear Dragon, Blade Knight, and Slate Warrior. Among these 6, Blade Knight would be the best option since Kaiba has so few cards that Blade Knight would jump to 2000 attack, so let's simplify 6 cards down to the 1. As for the best offensive card available, I think that would be the 3rd copy of Blue Eyes. Why? Because Seto freaking Kaiba. Also because when he draws 2, he tends to have drawn the 3rd. So that leaves us with 2 offensive options and 10 defensive ones for a total of 12 possible cards Kaiba is holding. Now in order to determine what is Kaiba's best move, we need to determine what Bakura could draw. Bakura's set of good moves here would involve getting rid of Blue Eyes and perhaps dishing out more damage. His best move would involve going for game. Bakura's card pool is more limited, which is good for this exercise. As for monsters Bakura might have, the best of them would be anything with 2100 or more attack, because then he can use Diabound to weaken Blue Eyes to 1200 and attack for game. The problem though is that if we look at all of Bakura's cards, he doesn't have quick access to a monster with that high an attack. Dark Ruler Hades will need a tribute to summon, and he only has Diabound on the field, and Soul Release emptied his graveyard so he can't bring out Dark Necrofear. Of his remaining monsters that could either attack over or crash with Blue Eyes, they are Gurnia, the Gross Ghost of Fled Dreams, the Portrait Secret, Disgrace Mage, and Doom Caliber Knight. These 5 all accomplish the same thing, whereby Diabound will equip to Blue Eyes to weaken it, then the other monster will attack to destroy it. Since none of them would inflict enough damage to go for game, we can reduce these 5 to just the best among them, which in this case is the one that deals the most damage, and that is Doom Caliber Knight with 1900 attack. In addition to Doom Caliber, the spells and traps that Bakura could draw that are good to best include Change of Heart, Monster Reborn, Spirit Sword of Sealing, Ectoplasmer, and Zoma the Spirit. Zoma the Spirit would involve equipping Diabound to Blue Eyes and hoping Kaiba attacks over Zoma on his turn, not knowing its effect that would burn Kaiba for game. Since Kaiba is very knowledgeable about the card pool, as evidenced by him knowing that Duke of Demise cost Bakura 500 life points during the standby phase, we can assume he wouldn't do that, so let's cross Zoma off the list. That leaves us with 5 cards that Bakura can draw. 5 Bakura cards versus 12 Kaiba cards gives us 60 possible scenarios. We can significantly reduce this by using the best card available method. Scenario A, the best card Bakura can draw is Ectoplasmer because he can immediately tribute Diabound and inflict half of its attack as damage to Kaiba, which incidentally would be exact game. The question is, do any of Kaiba's 12 cards mitigate this? One does, and that is Ring of Destruction. Bakura tributes Diabound to try to go for game, but Kaiba responds by destroying his Blue Eyes so that both duels hit 0 at the same time, resulting in a draw. Since the whole point of this video is to determine a winner, let's scratch this scenario off the list and thus scratch Ectoplasmer and Ring of Destruction off the card pool list. That reduces us from 60 scenarios to 44. Scenario B, Bakura takes control of Kaiba's Blue Eyes. This would be accomplished with Change of Heart, which Kaiba would either need to stop or stop 2 attacks from Blue Eyes and Diabound. 2 of his cards accomplish this. He could chain Burst Breath to tribute Blue Eyes, destroying Diabound in the process, or he could use Negate Attack to end the battle phase. In both of these cases, Kaiba significantly takes the lead. Scenario C, Bakura does in fact get a monster with 2100 attack or more on board. The only way for him to do this is Monster Reborn. He would use that to revive Kaiba's Blue Eyes, equip his Diabound to Kaiba's on-field Blue Eyes, then attack for game. Kaiba would need to stop the attack, which he can do with 4 cards: Shadow Spell, Negate Attack, Command Silencer, and Magical Trick Mirror to steal Grief Tablet from Bakura's graveyard. Since all 4 of these situations depend on Kaiba's next draw, and we're assuming good or best, we can say that all 4 of these result in advantage Kaiba. Kaiba also gets the win if he uses last turn in a chain to Reborn because Bakura doesn't have anything more powerful than Blue Eyes. Scenario D, Bakura gets rid of Kaiba's Blue Eyes. He can do this with Spirit Sword of Sealing. In this case, Kaiba would need to survive the attack from Diabound or stop Spirit Sword. He can stop it with Burst Breath, destroying Diabound in the process, or use Shadow Spell, Negate Attack, Command Silencer, or Magical Trick Mirror to stop the attack from Diabound. In all of these cases, the best ensuing move for Kaiba would be to ram a monster with equal attack into Diabound, which gets rid of Spirit Sword and Blue Eyes comes back to go for game. In Scenario E, Bakura summons Doom Caliber Knight. He equips Diabound to Blue Eyes and attacks over it with Doom Caliber, reducing Kaiba to 200 life points. Bakura ends his turn with Doom Caliber and Diabound on field. In this case, Kaiba's best move is the offensive one, where he's holding the 3rd copy of Blue Eyes. He then draws Soul Exchange, tributes both of Bakura's monsters for Blue Eyes, and goes for game. So in this branch, 4 of the 5 scenarios here, by using the best card available method, Kaiba wins. And in the 5th one, Scenario A, we get a draw. Now we come back to the first branch, which is where we were deciding what was Kaiba's other card at the end of his 2nd turn. Up to this point, we've been assuming that it was Silent Doom, and that his mystery card during the 3rd turn is something he drew from Card of Demise. The counter argument is that he should have set Silent Doom before activating Card of Demise, and the counter to that is that in the anime, duelists tend to not be hyper efficient, as evidenced by Kaiba himself. But let's say Kaiba didn't misplay and instead couldn't set that other card. That would mean it was a monster that he couldn't have used on his 2nd or 3rd turn. So it's not a dragon that he could have brought out with Flute of Summoning Dragon that he played on his 2nd turn, and it's not a level 5 or 6 monster that he could have summoned by tributing his weakened Blue Eyes on his 3rd turn. So it has to be a level 4 or lower monster because on his 2nd turn, he used his normal summon on Lord of D, and on his 3rd turn, he used his normal summon on the 2nd Blue Eyes. In this branch, Kaiba ends his turn while holding a monster and passes back to Bakura, who now, if he draws Change of Heart, Monster Reborn, Spirit Sword of Sealing, or Ectoplasma, will finish off Kaiba. That's 4 cards out of if he's running a 40 card deck, 30 remaining cards in the deck, so a 13% chance that he gets what he needs to win. From an odds standpoint, it's pretty low, but from the standpoint of our methodology, his chances jump up to 80%, with the remaining 20% being Doom Caliber Knight. We can then apply the same ending in that case where Kaiba has the Blue Eyes Soul Exchange combo to go for game on his 4th turn. That means that in this branch, Bakura wins in 4 out of the 5 scenarios, with the 5th scenario going in Kaiba's favor. For those keeping score at home, if we combine both branches together, that means Kaiba wins 5 times, Bakura wins 4 times, and the last scenario is in fact a draw. Based on the best card available scenario breakdown, the conclusion would be to give the nod to Kaiba. For dramatic purposes, I would conclude that Kaiba drew Silent Doom with Card of Demise, leaving him with a useless monster in hand. Bakura summons Doom Caliber Knight, destroys Kaiba's Blue Eyes, and leaves him with 200 life points, staring down 2 monsters. But as Kaiba so eloquently states to Darts,
"Whenever I'm about to lose, I draw exactly what I need!"
And what he needs right here to start his 4th turn is Pot of Greed. Kaiba in great detail explains what it does, then draws 2 cards. He reveals them to be Soul Exchange and the 3rd copy of Blue Eyes. He uses Soul Exchange to tribute Bakura's 2 monsters for the dragon and goes for game. If this duel was in a vacuum, this all would be completely fine by me. But if we want to throw in the plot of the arc, then this is how I would have changed it, and this would be my preferred method. As mentioned at the beginning, this duel between Bakura and Kaiba is exclusive to the anime. In fact, Kaiba's entire involvement in this arc is exclusive to the anime. Bakura somehow convinces Kaiba to travel to Egypt, and while he's standing in front of the tablet, sucks him into the world of the Pharaoh's memories in order to revive the Thief King Bakura in the RPG between him and the Pharaoh. Where I would have altered the writing is for Bakura to defeat Kaiba in the duel. My preferred method would be the Monster Reborn scenario where Diabound weakens Kaiba's Blue Eyes, then Bakura's Blue Eyes seals the win. This win would give Yami Bakura control of Kaiba's soul to be used as he pleases during the RPG, whether that be strengthening the Ka of Diabound during his fight with Obelisk, and or reviving the Thief King. So instead of Kaiba telling Bakura he won't go to Egypt,
like I'm going to Egypt cause some lunatic told me to,
then showing up anyways because plot, now Bakura has a way of actually forcing Kaiba into the action. But let me know your thoughts. Which of these scenarios do you think is most likely? Do you think there's a separate scenario that should have been how the duel unfolds? Or do you think, knowing that this is the last season, that the plot wouldn't have allowed Bakura to be defeated by anyone other than Yugi? Until then, catch y'all next time.